And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special girls section preview edition of Inside the Bubble. As always, I'm Matt Harrington alongside Brandon Spratt. We've got a great episode for you. We're going to go section by section. We're going to make our predictions, look at past winners and more. Brandon, this is my favorite time of the year. I hope it's yours too. We're going to have a lot of fun here.
Oh, it's such a good time of year, and we'll get to do this again for boys in a couple weeks. But the girls go up first here to get the sections underway.
Absolutely. We're going to go ahead and take a look. We're going to go in numerical order. We'll start with Class A, and we will go to Section 1A as we'll take a look at the bracket here on your screen. The Dodge County Wildcats, they are the #1 team in Section 1A. They finished the regular season with a record of 15-8-2. They get a bye in the first round, as do the 2 and 3 seeds, Albert Lea. They, of course, are the defending section champions, are the Tigers of Albert Lea, and they will take on Waseca in the semifinals. And then that one quarterfinal game will be between Winona and Austin, Brandon. Dodge County, very good season. They've got some good talent on that team as well.
Yeah, they do. You're looking at a sophomore goalie in Ida Huber, who's had a very, very strong season. They beat Albert Lea in the regular season as well to kind of, in maybe a section final preview. Dodge County, this is their first year in the section, dropping down from Section 1 AA, and they earned the 1 seed, and they're a pretty strong 1 seed as well.
They are a strong 1 seed as well. Albert Lea is another team to keep an eye on, Brandon. They've got a great goaltending duo of Jada Moyer and Rachel Doppelhammer. They have combined for 8 shutouts this year for Albert Lea, so a team to keep an eye on. Let's go ahead now and take a look at how this section has fared in years past. We'll go to the top 5, or the last 5 years rather, on your screen. And as you see, the defending champions are the Albert Lea Tigers, who won the section last year. Good stretch there for Rochester Lords, Brandon, and Red Wing in there as well. Anything stand out to you here?
Well, we mentioned Albert Lea being the defending section champions. Their top 5 scorers last year were really young, and they're still 10th grade and younger this year. So it's going to be a tough road for Albert Lea to get to the state tournament in 2023, but this is a program that has some staying power in this section, I would say.
All right, let's go ahead now and take a look at our predictions. Myself and Brandon made predictions, as well as our very own Pete Wagner. So we'll go ahead and take a look at those predictions here, as you see in the bottom of your screen. And Brandon, it looks like you and Pete agreed that Dodge County, the top seed, is going to go to the state tournament. I went with the Albert Lea Tigers. I think either one of those teams is a very good shoo-in potentially to get to state.
Yeah, Matt, I told you before we started recording here, I wasn't going to look. I didn't want to know who we picked, so I wanted a little on-air surprise. This is the first one. I like Dodge County. They're a little more of a veteran team as well, but Albert Lea could definitely give them a run. It's a likely section final, but of course teams like Waseca, Winona, and Austin obviously want something to say about that. Yeah,
absolutely. Their quarterfinal, that one quarterfinal round will begin on February 9th. Semifinals will be on the 11th, and then the section championship will be in Owatonna on February 16th. So that is Class 1, Section 1A, that is, for the girls. So we'll go now to Section 2A on the girls' side, and the #1 seed in this section is, no surprise, the Mankato East Cougars, who had a great regular season, 17-6. They were in the KARE 11 top 11 as well for quite some time. And then, of course, Litchfield, Dassel, Cokato, an interesting 2 seed. They've had some good wins this year, maybe not the strongest overall record, but a very good team as well. And then Hutchinson gets the 3 seed. They'll take on Mankato West in the quarterfinals. And Minnesota River, Brandon, will take on Waconia. What stands out to you here about this bracket?
Yeah, Mankato East, led by senior goalie Anna Rader with a .942 save percentage and 7 shutouts this season, looking to get the Cougars back to the XL Energy Center here in 2023. They also have Mackenzie Keller, a senior who leads the team in goals and points. They did lose to Litchfield, Dassel, Cokato in the regular season, so that's a little bit of a wrench in things if they do come to beat in that section championship. I think Mankato East is pretty strong, and then Litchfield, you know, even a Hutchinson is right around the same record as well, so it could definitely give the Dragons a run for their money in the semis.
They could indeed. Let's go ahead now and take a look at how this section has fared in the past 5 years. And as you see, Mankato East, of course, was the team that won this section last year. Mount Westonka, when they were in that section, they were the winners in 2021 and 2019. Hutchinson also has a win in there in 2020, and the New Ulm Eagles as well when they were in that Section 1. So Mankato East looking to do a little repeat action here, Brandon.
Yep, and 3 of the 5 previous winners in this section, Mound West Tonka twice, and then New Ulm, no longer in this section. They've been moved to different ones. So this section's seen a little chopping and changing over the last couple of years. There's really not a dominant team in there. So Mankato East, like you said, looking to go back-to-back and sort of establish themselves in Section 2.
Let's take a look now at our predictions for Section 2A, our winners, that is. And as you will see here in just a moment, we all agreed that Mankato East, the top seed, is going to be the team that goes through. But again, Brandon, you mentioned Litchfield Escoqueto. They beat Mankato East in the season, so it's not going to be an easy win necessarily if they meet in the final.
No, not at all. And you see that section final, it will be at Gustavus at Lund Arena on the 16th of February, 7 p.m. And again, we'll see, though. Litchfield, though, has some work to do to get there. So does Mankato East.
And I believe that section, this section playoffs will be streaming live on MN Hockey TV as well. So we're excited to have that section aboard. Let's go now to Section 3 in Class A. So we'll take a look at the bracket on your screen. And once again, the Laverne Cardinals are the #1 seed, of course, led by Cameron Van Batavia, who is undoubtedly one of the most talented players in the state. This year, Van Batavia has 52 goals, of course, is committed to Mankato State University, or Minnesota State Mankato, that is. The New Ulm gets the #2 seed, Marshall the #3. They'll take on Worthington in the first round. And then Wyndham area will be the 4 seed, and they will take on Fairmont, Brandon. But again, another dominant regular season for Laverne.
Yeah, it was, with Cameron Van Batavia leading the way. They don't have quite the depth scoring they had a year ago, but still earning the #1 seed in this section. The 2-3 matchup is always going to be tricky if Marshall gets there. Marshall was around 500 in the regular season, but New Ulm did not defeat Laverne in the regular season, but their sophomore goaltender, Ava Brennan, had a .937 save percentage. So she's really the biggest obstacle standing in the way of Laverne getting back to St. Paul.
And New Ulm's a team that's won 5 in a row heading into the state tournament, so they're going to be certainly a team to keep an eye on. And Laverne has also beaten all of these teams already in the regular season. So let's take a look now at how this section has fared over the past 5 years. And no surprise to see the Laverne Cardinals. They are going for the four-peat of this section. Mankato East, when they were in it in 2019, they won as well. And then Marshall in 2018. But again, the dominance, it's legit here from the Cardinals.
It is, yeah, and probably not a coincidence that coincides with the career of Cameron Van Batavia, who's now up over 400 points in her high school career. Not sure if she's quite going to get to that state record, but she could finish #2 all-time for points in girls high school hockey.
Yeah, it's a very impressive player in Cameron Van Batavia. We'll go ahead now and look at our predictions for myself, Brandon, and Pete. And once again here, we are all in unison that we think the Laverne Cardinals are going to be the 1 seed. New Ulm, probably the toughest test, Brandon, but overall, Laverne is the benefactor of a weaker section, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Just want to take a moment to shout out Laverne as well for that logo. I think that's a really, really clean logo that the Cardinals have. Love the sort of the old script as well. So, but yeah, kind of already hit on it. New Ulm, though, with a strong goaltender, could definitely push their rivals, Laverne.
All right, we'll go to Section 4A now, and this, in my opinion, is could be one of the best section finals if it pans out that way. We've got the Simley Spartans, who are the #1 seed. What a great season for Simley. Of course, they're led by seniors Michaela McGowan and Ella Tucido, who combined put up about 68 points each. So they were very impressive during the regular season. Of course, South St. Paul is the defending section champion. They had a great regular season as well. Lost a couple of times to Simley. But then you've got Chisago Lakes, who won this section just a few years ago. They'll be taking on Red Wing in the first round of the section playoffs. And then the Riveters, which of course is Two Rivers and Highland Park, they will take on Visitation in the quarterfinals as well. Brandon, Simley and South St. Paul, is this just a 2-horse race, or can any of these other teams maybe throw in an upset in there?
You hit on it. I mean, if Simley and South St. Paul can advance to that championship game, that might be the top section final in girls single A. But I will throw in there Chisago Lakes. They certainly lost a lot to college and graduation the last couple of years, but they're still a pretty solid team that could definitely push South St. Paul in a semifinal. But at the end of the day, I think Simley and South St. Paul will probably get there.
All right, let's take a look at how this section has fared over the past 5 years. And as you see, as I mentioned earlier, South St. Paul is the defending section champion. Of course, Gentry Academy won the section in 2021. And then South St. Paul again in 2020. And then St. Paul United, when they were around, they won the section a couple of times. So we'll go ahead now and take a look at our predictions for Section 4A. This was a tough one. I went back and forth a little bit, Brandon, but me and Pete decided to go the Simley route. We went with South St. Paul. Tell me why.
Yeah, I think there's a compelling case, certainly for picking Simley. They're going to be motivated to try to get their logo up there on the board in terms of winning this section. I'm just going with a little bit of a cliche. I'm sure you've heard the cliche, hard to beat a team 3 times in one season. That's kind of the logic I'm going with here in picking South St. Paul.
Well, they're a good team, certainly, and they've got one of the best underclass players in the state in Lily Packle. Certainly going to be fun to watch. And like you mentioned, Brandon, if Simley and South St. Paul get there, going to be one of the funner section finals. We're going to step aside here on Inside the Bubble. When we come back, we'll round out the Class A section preview. Stick with us.
Behind every world-class athlete, there's a team who takes extra care to support them. At Affinity Plus, we take extra care with all your banking goals, from checking accounts to credit cards. Our biggest victory? Helping you win in the ways that matter most. Affinity Plus.
Your college experience begins with your dream. Your time at St. Cloud State will uniquely be your own, but your journey will be guided by our community. Be you. Be bold. Be a Husky.
What if there was a place where everything was hockey?
Oh, he can skate. Here comes Steves in on goal, all alone.
In Minnesota, there is.
Scores!
Welcome back here to Inside the Bubble, our special girls section preview edition. We're going to take a look at the second half of Class A now. We'll start in Section 5A, and this, I think, might be the best section in Girls A. You have the Holy Angel Stars looking to make their first state tournament appearance since 2006, up at the #1 seed. They get a bye straight to the semifinals. They'll host at Richfield Ice Arena. The 2-7 matchup is Orono against Pine City. Really good depth in this section, too, especially the 3-6 Mound West Tonka, Southwest Christian against Delano Rockford. And then we have the 4-5 matchup, Minneapolis and Breck.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun section, Brandon. You mentioned Holy Angels. They did have a couple of losses to some AA teams down the stretch, but they've been so good all year long. No surprise to see them at #1. And of course, Orono, great team as well, that's trying to defend their section championship. And Minneapolis Breck could be an intriguing matchup as well. Whoever gets Holy Angels, they've already lost to Holy Angels. Holy Angels has beat Minneapolis and Breck. So interested to see what we get there. But yeah, this is a really fun section. I think really any of the 3 teams, the 1, 2, and 3, could win the section.
Yeah, and one thing I've noted as well is that both the 5 and 6 seed Breck and Delano Rockford have very good, experienced goaltenders that definitely pose an upset threat. The Mustangs sprung a huge upset in this section a year ago. Maybe they could do it again. Let's take a look at the last 5 winners here in Section 5, Single A. And you see a lot of the Mustangs up there when they were in their state title winning years. Chisago Lakes winning the section 2 years ago before moving to 4A. And then Orono, the defending section champs, they had a program best 3rd place finish at the X last year, looking to get back this year.
Yeah, they've got a ton of really good underclass players on that team as well. Of course, Zoe Lopez being one of them. She's been a goal-scoring machine for the Spartans this year. I think that 1-2 potential matchup that we could get in the section final, between Holy Angels and Orono would be a very fun one to watch.
Worth noting, Holy Angels earned the #1 seed, beating both Orono and Mound West Tonka Southwest Christian in the regular season, despite maybe not as good of an overall resume. But let's see who we picked in Section 5. I'm very curious to see on this one as we roll to the winners, and it's going to be a clean sweep for the Orono Spartans. Maybe not the year for Coach Lemire and Holy Angels, but that would be a great section final. They play at the St. Louis Park Rec Center. Great venue as well for a section final, too. But yeah, really good section here. We did all go with Orono.
Yeah, we did all go with Orono, and that's not to take anything away from Holy Angels. I think they're more than capable of potentially getting there as well. But you mentioned Orono. They've got a great goaltender in Celia Dahl, who has 9 shutouts this year, which is among the best in the state. So that's my pick to win, and it looks like obviously you two are in agreement with me.
Absolutely. Time to move on to Section 6, Single A. And at the #1 seed, earning the #1 seed and a bye to the semifinals, is the Fergus Falls Otters, who compiled 20 wins in the regular season. One of just a handful of teams in girls Single A to do that. The 2 seed in the section is the Wilmer Cardinals. They'll face off against Prairie Center. 3-6 matchup is River Lakes, the defending section champs, against Morris Benson. Then the 4-5 matchup, Northern Lakes and Breckenridge Wahpeton for the right to face Fergus Falls in the semis. Matt, this was a little bit of a runaway in the regular season, but see if any of the chasing pack can give Fergus Falls some competition.
Yeah, Fergus Falls was clearly the #1 team. I think that was decided quite a while ago. But Wilmer's an interesting team as well. They did play Fergus Falls close in one of their matchups, 1-0, but then also lost to them 5-0. So there's how that 2 seed compares to the #1 seed. But Fergus Falls just has so many good statistics. They've got great goaltending duo of Lexi Metcalf and Anna Jerkis. They split games, pretty much have identical records and statistics as well. And then Maddie Halter has 14 multi-point games. She's got 54 points. She's been a stud for the Otters in the regular season.
Yeah, looking ahead to a potential 2-3 between Wilmer and River Lakes. They actually met just a couple nights ago to end the regular season, with River Lakes coming out on top. So they earned a split with Wilmer there. It was a little late for the overall resume to catch up. It didn't change the section seating at all. Just an interesting note there. Let's look at the last 5 champs from this section, and you'll see River Lakes winning the last 2, the Stars getting to the X. A couple trips on there, or just one for Wilmer. I got my Cardinals confused as Alexandra is on there from 2018. They're now in girls AA. Fergus Falls are going to make their first trip since 2019. Safe to say we'll likely have a team that's been there in the last couple of years, barring a pretty big upset.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Brandon. As you mentioned, Fergus Falls, Wilmer, and River Lakes all there, 1, 2, and 3. Going to be tough for River Lakes to pull off the three-peat, certainly not impossible, but this is one of those sections where the 1 seed seems to just have a much larger gap than the 2 and 3, for example.
Yeah, and you mentioned really good goaltending in this section. River Lakes does have Cadence Roski, a sophomore goalie, with a .933 save percentage. That's what sort of helped them beat Wilmer. And but we'll see if anyone can challenge the Otters. Let's look at our picks, throw them up on the screen. And not really surprising, we're all going to pick Fergus Falls and pick the Otters to make the trip down 94 to the XL Energy Center.
Yeah, to me, this was one of the easier sections to pick, and it's not anything against this team, any of the other teams. But when you look at the resume that Fergus Falls has put together this year, 20 wins, it's impressive, and I'd be surprised if they were to lose in the second playoffs.
On to Section 7, Single A now, one of the top sections as well in girls Single A. You'll see the top seed, the Proctor Hermantown Mirage, the 2021 state champs, looking to get back to the X this year. They'll get a bye, as the top seed does often in girls Single A. Duluth Marshall taking on North Shore in the 2-7 matchup. Definitely an intriguing team there in Duluth Marshall. They played Proctor Hermantown close a couple weeks ago. And then some intriguing matchups in 3-6. Moose Lake, who we had in our top 11 for a while, is in there at number 3 against Hibbing Chisholm. Rockridge and Cloquet-Esco Carleton. Fun note on the Lumberjills, they led the state with 5 ties this year in their 25-game regular season.
That's a big chunk of ties, certainly. Yeah, that'll be a good 4-5 game. Mm-hmm. Cloquet beat Rockridge 3-1 in the regular season. Of course, Proctor Hermantown, Duluth Marshall had a great game a couple weeks ago that you were mentioning. That was a 4-3 win for Proctor Hermantown. So, and then, yeah, Moose Lake's an interesting team because they started so hot, faltered a little bit down the stretch, but they're certainly a team that could spoil the hopes of a team like Duluth Marshall. So going to be interesting to see how this section plays out for sure.
And Duluth Marshall led by junior forward Ilsa Lindemann with 41 goals. She's a University of St. Thomas commit. Let's look at the last 5 section winners out of Section 7 Single A. I think we're going to see a lot of Proctor Hermantown Mirage M's up there, and indeed we are. The Lumberjills made the one trip back in 2020 before the COVID pandemic, but they're split on either side by a pair of Proctor Hermantown Mirage logos. Duluth Marshall looking to break through and get back to the X.
Yeah, if Duluth Marshall could do that, that would be a significant win for their program history. And yeah, Proctor Hermantown, as you mentioned, state champs in 2021, which I believe was also an undefeated season as well for the Mirage. So they have been really good in this section. No surprise to see them earn the top seed.
All right, time to look at our predictions here in Section 7, Single A. And we have 3 M's up there, but one of them looks a little different. Matt, you went with the Hilltoppers.
I did go with the Hilltoppers. This was a really tough one for me to pick because it is a significant upset just because of the dominance that the Mirage have had. But yeah, I mean, Proctor Hermantown has been good, but I feel like Duluth Marshall, that close 4-3 game that was at Proctor Hermantown, I believe, I've just got a feeling that this might be the year that Duluth Marshall can get to the XL Energy Center. And it's going to be tough, no doubt. But yeah, I'm rolling with the Hilltoppers here.
Very interesting. Duluth Marshall with a good goaltending as well. Proctor Hermantown looking to replace Abby Pajari, who's now playing college hockey. They've kind of split minutes in net, so it will be interesting to see who Coach Stauber rolls with through the playoffs. One section to go here in girls Class A, and it is Section 8, which is led, of course, by the War Road Warriors, the defending state champs. They led state Single A teams this year with 21 wins. And there is 2 byes in this section. The Crookston Pirates earn 1 as well to the semifinals, which will be played, of note, at War Road Gardens Arena up in War Road. 3-6 matchup, the Thief River Falls Prowlers against the International Falls Broncos. And then it's East Grand Forks and Detroit Lakes in the 4-5. Matt, I know we obviously had a chance to go up to War Road this year and check out that Bartz, Hendrickson, Johnson top line. Is there any reason to think that they're not going to be back at the X?
I would say no. I mean, they've been so good this year. They're the 3 leading scorers in the state. They've just been terrific for the War Road Warriors, and they've got some other really good players as well that are not on that top line. And so Crookston, the number 2 seed. If they were in a lot of other sections, they would probably be the 1 seed. But when you're in a section with War Road, obviously it makes it difficult to do so. So they do get a bye, but yeah, War Road, the pretty clear favorite here in this section.
Yeah, and one thing of note, too, for Crookston, I know that they pushed themselves a little more this year, taking off maybe some conference opponents off their schedule, played a few more AA teams than usual, so they're maybe a little more battle-tested if you're looking for a feather in the cap of the Pirates, if you will. Let's look at the defending section champs here in 8 Single A. Well, and it's a clean sweep for Izzy Marvin's team. The Warriors have made at least 5 straight trips to the state tournament. I think it's actually more than that. They'll be looking to add another War Road logo there in 2023.
Yeah, very impressive that War Road has had this dominance. And, of course, they've got all seniors on that top line, so they're looking to make their 4th-plus trip to the X. So been impressive and no reason for me to not see them again at the XL Energy Center.
So let's see, who did we pick? Section 8, and yes, it is all War Road. One thing of note for Crookston, their goaltender, Campbell Frege, I hope I'm saying that right, but she is from Grand Forks, and she played Bantam AA hockey in Grand Forks, so certainly used to playing against some good goal scorers. She'll try to shut down that Bartz, Hendrickson, Johnson top line if they're able to get that matchup in the section final. Yeah,
and Crookston's an interesting team because they've had such a great regular season. But yeah, you mentioned semifinals and the championship are going to be at the War Road Gardens, which obviously is a huge addition for War Road. So that's what makes it tough. But I'm going with War Road in this one, and obviously you guys are too.
That's going to wrap it up for Girls Class A. Up next, we've transitioned to AA. We'll have sections 1 through 4 coming up next on Inside the Bubble.
They say good things come to those who wait. But greatness, that's a different beast. It doesn't come when it's called. It won't wander up to those who do nothing. You have to bait it with the sweat you leave on the ice. You gotta push through the pain, smile through every ache, and suffer every shift. You gotta chase it. All in the name of the game you love. Because greatness comes to those who take it.
Behind every world-class athlete, there's a team who takes extra care to support them. At Affinity Plus, we take extra care with all your banking goals, from checking accounts to credit cards. Our biggest victory? Helping you win in the ways that matter most. Affinity Plus.
Welcome back to this special girls section preview edition of Inside the Bubble. As always, Matt Harrington and Brandon Spratt with you. We're halfway through. We've gotten through Class A, and now we are on our way to Class AA, as we will start in numerical order. We'll start in Section 1 AA, as we will take a look at the bracket here, and the Lakeville South Cougars with a 20-4 record during the regular season, South Suburban Conference champions as well. They earned the number 1 seed. The Lakeville North Panthers, their arch rival, of course, getting the number 2 seed is Lakeville North. They finished with a record of 18-7 during the season. Owatonna Huskies, very good team as well. They only lost 6 games in the regular season. They finish at number 3. They'll take on Rochester Century. North will take on Rochester Mayo. Then an interesting 4-5 game between Northfield and Farmington. But Brandon, what stands out to you in this Section 1 AA?
This might be the most wide open section in either Class A or AA. It's just absolutely wide open in my opinion. I had no idea how they were going to seed it. You have Northfield, the section champs from a year ago, coming in at the 4th seed despite a strong season. They have the junior forward, Ayla Puppy, who had 48 goals and 79 points. She's off to the U of M in a couple of years, but they end up as a 4 seed. And Farmington, despite the record, is not a cakewalk either. Mm-hmm. They've given some really good games to a lot of teams in this section, including a win over Owatonna in the holiday tournament. So this section is going to be pretty wild. Lakeville North and Owatonna, for their part, will probably get through to the semis. Northfield, though, definitely not a gimme. And then from there, once we get to the semis, I have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, all bets are off after that. And, of course, important to note, too, that Lakeville South and Lakeville North split their regular season games as well. So you could have put 1 or 2, really, but I think probably the overall record for Lakeville South might have been a little bit more of a contributor to why they got the number 1 seed. We will go now to the past 5 winners of Section 1 AA. And Northfield, as you mentioned, Brandon, was last year's section champion. Farmington won 3 times in a row in 2021, 2020, and 2019. And Lakeville South trying to get back to the state tournament for the first time since 2018.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to look at this, to be honest, given what we know about the boys' side, where the Lakevilles have been so dominant in Section 1. But to see Farmington with 3 straight trips in there, there's not even a Lakeville North logo up there. So them with a very strong season, trying to get back to state. And then Northfield, the section champs from a year ago, they play single A hockey and boys, so they're not even in AA. So this is a very interesting section, not dominated by the Lakevilles in the way that the AA or the boys side is.
Certainly, and now we'll take a look at our predictions for winners. And for the very first time, we have each picked a different team. Brandon, you're going with Lakeville North. Pete is going with Lakeville South. And I'm going with Owatonna. But tell me why you took Lakeville North.
Yeah, I kind of foreshadowed it a little bit in saying that they hadn't won the section in a while. And I'm going to pick them. They brought in some good players this year, including Addison Ottinger, who was in the state tournament a year ago with Burnsville. They also have Kaya Weiland. They kind of split those 2 goaltenders in goal. She's an 8th grader playing goalie on a AA contending team with 10 wins and a .918 save percentage. Some good scoring as well, but it truly is wide open. Tell me why you went with Owatonna.
Yeah, I think they're one of the more underrated teams in the state. They've only lost 6 games. They have a 10-game winning streak also entering sections, which is very important. They're averaging 6 goals per game, less than 2 allowed per game. So they're not only are they winning, they're winning big, which is obviously a huge thing as well. They're over 30% on the power play, and of course beat Lakeville South earlier this year. And they did beat Rochester Century combined 22-1 in their 2 meetings. So you can probably pencil them a shoe-in to advance. But really, after that, like you mentioned, just chaos, probably.
Yeah, it is. And Ezra Oyen, as well as a senior forward for Owatonna, 30 goals and 59 points. She's going to play college at Vermont, really leading the attack. You mentioned that 10-game winning streak. Not only did they beat Lakeville South, they beat Northfield to win their conference title. They beat them twice. So don't sleep on Northfield, even though none of us picked them. They're the defending section champs, and with Ayla Puppy and a great goaltender, they have as good a chance as anybody.
Yeah, that one's going to be a fun section for sure. We'll move on to 2AA now. So we'll take a look at the bracket now on your screen, and the Minnetonka Skippers are the #1 seed in that section. They will take on New Prague, and I will give a shout out to New Prague because they've got one of the state's top goal scorers. That, of course, being Ella Hansen. She's got 31 goals. Next closest teammate has 5. So if she's on her game, who knows? Not saying they're going to upset Minnetonka, but something to keep an eye on for sure is Ella Hansen. Then you have Prior Lake and Eden Prairie in that 4-5 matchup. And then Shakopee will host Bloomington Jefferson. That's also a co-op with Bloomington Kennedy. And then the 2 seed in the section, Holy Family Fire, hosting the Chaska Chanhassen Stormhawks.
Yeah, this is kind of a 2-team section, as it really was a year ago as well. Minnetonka Holy Family, big favorites to get to the Braemar Arena section championship game. For Minnetonka this year, they're paced at the back end by Ashlyn Hazlett and Josie Hemp. The sophomores have combined for 11 shutouts for Minnetonka this season. That Prior Lake EP game in the 4-5, I have an interesting eye on. I think that'll be good. Lakers beat the Eagles in the regular season. But EP's been playing well lately, including a win over Holy Angels.
Yeah, that was in their season finale, so a good win certainly for the Eagles and the Skippers as well. You mentioned one of the best goaltending duos in the state. Let's take a look now at how this section has gone over the past handful of seasons, and no surprise, the Skippers are 4-time defending not state champions, but section champions, and of course Eden Prairie as well went back in 2018, but not really a shock here, Brandon.
No, it's not. And Eden Prairie had a very good run in there. They had some state titles, too. They're actually the last team. EP is the last team in girls AA to win the state title, other than Edina or Andover. That's how dominant Edina and Andover have been. And despite all those Block M's up on there, Minnetonka yet to crest the mountain completely.
Yeah, they've come close a couple of times. Let's take a look now at our prediction, our winners for Section 2AA. And here we are. We're all in agreement that the Minnetonka Skippers are going to go back to the Xcel Energy Center for the 5th year in a row. But Brandon, they needed overtime to beat Holy Family in the section final last year. Very evenly matched. Maybe they've got a little bit more of an edge, but do not count out the Fire by any means.
No. They're a very veteran team as well as Holy Family. Sedona Blair, their goaltender committed to New Hampshire, has almost double-digit shutouts this year. She's excellent every year, as you know. They have Josie Lynn and Haley Box, a couple young forwards who have picked up the point gap a little bit that Maddie Kaiser vacated when she went off to college for Holy Family. But there's a lot of veterans up front and on the back end as well. So it's a very veteran Holy Family team. Obviously, they're looking for their first state tournament trip.
Yeah, they sure are. And yeah, that should be a fun section. And we'll move on to Section 3AA now. So we take a look at the bracket for that. And no surprise to see Apple Valley, #1, great season for the Eagles, who had 18 wins. Of course, led by the Moran sisters, who have put up over 50 points each, Michaela and Marie. And then they will take on Hastings in the quarterfinal round on February 8th. And then Rosemont earns the #2 seed. They will take on the Egan Wildcats in the 2-7 game. Metro South and then Eastview will face off in 3-6. And then Cretin-Derham Hall will take on Park of Cottage Grove. But Brandon, this seems like another one of those sections where it was pretty clear early that Apple Valley was going to earn the #1 seed.
Definitely. And I would add, Apple Valley is the only quarterfinal here I'm even remotely confident in predicting. Even Rosemont as the 2 seed has kind of struggled a little bit down the stretch. I'll give a nod as well to Metro South, the Phoenix. For those of you that might not know or wondering who is Metro South, it's a co-op with Burnsville, Faribault, St. Paul Academy, and a couple other schools sprinkled in there. It came together pretty late in the summer that they were able to get a place for some girls to play together. So no Burnsville here in Section 3. That is basically who Metro South is. Just want to clear that up for the folks at home.
Yeah, going to be an interesting section. Of course, Rosemont and Egan tied 3-3 at one point in the regular season. And Metro South and Eastview. Eastview lost twice to Rosemont during the season, but they did split with Egan. Beat Metro South as well, but they also a split. So these two teams, these two matchups have split with each other in the regular season. So that could create some chaos in this section bracket. And we will move on now to the past 5 winners of Section 3 AA. And as you mentioned, Brandon, Burnsville winners in 2022 and 2020 as well. Eastview, a lot of E teams in here. Eastview, Eastridge, and Egan all winning in the past 5 years.
Yeah, and Eastridge no longer in this section. We'll see them coming up in just a little bit. Burnsville had a very nice run there. Unfortunately, they just didn't have the players to field a team by themselves this year. So they had to find that co-op. But obviously, they did pretty well to earn the 3 seed. Eastview got as far as the state quarterfinals in 2021, and they only won a handful of games this year, but they're going to be a tricky out for Metro South, not Burnsville. Almost slipped up. But I believe, as you said, they split this year. So Apple Valley looking to add their name to this list. It's been wide open here in 3AA.
It sure has. And now let's take a look at our predicted winners for this section. And as you see, we all agree that the Apple Valley Eagles will be going to the state tournament. And, you know, Brendan, like I mentioned, it's going to be kind of chaotic here in these other matchups, but it seems like Apple Valley kind of a step ahead of everyone else.
I think, yeah, they rose to the top later in the season. There was a point about halfway through the regular season that I was even a little bit skeptical of Apple Valley, but they seem to have found some better goaltending of late. Even, I think you were mentioning splits. I think even Cretin and Park actually split during the regular season too. So again, nobody really knows what's going to happen there. Special shout out for Metro South, their senior forward, Madison Krumholtz, one of their top returners. They actually had a lot of players leave the program after it was announced they'd be becoming a co-op. Krumholtz stuck around. She led the way with 24 goals this year for the Phoenix.
Well, looking forward to the Section 3 AA bracket. We'll move now to the Section 4 AA bracket. And boy, this section is loaded. You've got the Hill Murray Pioneers, who have 21 wins. They can make that 22 tonight as they take on Benilde St. Margaret's. They will host North Tartan in the first round. Roseville Matamidi will take on Eastridge, Stillwater, and Woodbury in the 3-6. Then Gentry Academy will host White Bear Lake. So this is a very suburban East-heavy conference, Brandon. But and speaking of that, Stillwater went 16-0 in the suburban East, but they get the 3 seed. Just tells you how deep this section is.
Yeah, I mean, undefeated conference champs to 3 seed, right? But Stillwater did lose games to both the 1 and 2 seed in this section. You mentioned, I think these were the top 4 teams in the suburban East this year, lining up 3, 4, 5, 6. Roseville Matamidi and Eastridge is a rematch from a game to end the regular season. Roseville Matamidi won to probably earn the right to host that quarterfinal game. And then White Bear Lake is, despite maybe a little bit of a lackluster record, is a pretty decent squad down there as the 7 seed. Hill Murray should cruise past North Tartan there at the top, but past that, semifinals and championship at Aldrich. It's going to be good. Hill Murray, of course, led by Ella Housey, a Miss Hockey candidate, St. Thomas commit, who plays on the blue line and has 42 points. And then Grace Zahn, second in the state with a .956 save percentage. So Hill Murray has 2 of the top players in the state at 2 important positions, D and goalie.
They sure do. And of course, Gentry Academy had a great regular season as well. But of course, when you're in a section with Hill Murray, you're going to get the 2 seed. But when you look at this section too, Woodbury's a 6 seed. They won 16 games and they're a 6 seed. But again, a lot of that had to do with the head-to-head record in the suburban East. So that's why they fall at the number 6 seed. And we'll move on now to our past 5 winners of this section in years past. Gentry Academy, of course, is the defending section champions. Stillwater won it in 2021. And of course, Hill Murray in 18 and 20. And then White Bear Lake. So we have 4 different winners here. 5 years, a lot of variability in this section.
Yeah, it just shows how strong and deep this section is. You mentioned Woodbury is the 6th seed. They'd love to get their logo up here at some point. Not sure if this is the year, but 1 through 6, probably the deepest section in the state for sure. But yeah, no back-to-back winners in this section. Someone will likely add their logo up here a second time, one of these three. But yeah, as you said, a lot of variability and very competitive.
Let's take a look at our predicted winners now for this section. And we all agreed that Hail Murray would be the winner here in Section 4AA. It's not going to be easy, Brandon, but I think part of the reason, at least why I chose Hail Murray, is they've got home ice advantage in the semis, and they've got it in the championship as well.
Yeah, you're right about that. But like you said, don't sleep on Gentry. They're a very veteran team. Kara Sajovic leading the way with 60 points for them. She's a St. Thomas commit. They're very deep up front. They have twins Juliana and Janessa Gazdick playing defense that are absolutely locked down. I just think the goaltending edge is there for Hail Murray in this particular matchup. But as I was telling you, if there's one section final you maybe want to go check out in person, I think it's this one. I think this could be the best section final in the state. It's
going to be a fun one indeed. So there is sections 1 through 4 on the AA side. We're going to pause, take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have the final 4 sections of AA. Stick with us.
And now we hit the home stretch with the final 4 sections. We'll start it back up in Section 5 AA. And Matt, I mentioned Section 4 AA being one of the deepest. This one probably gives it a run for its money. Top-seeded Maple Grove gets a bye to the semifinals. All games played at Roseville Ice Arena here in Section 5 AA. There's a couple good ones in here, though, as Champlain Park Coon Rapids takes on Rogers. North Wright County, Osseo Park Center in the 3-6, and then Centennial Spring Lake Park and Mountain View Irondale in the 2-7 matchup. This section's pretty deep 1 through 5.
It is indeed, Brandon, and Maple Grove, of course, earns that 1 seed, had a great season, but North Wright County had some interesting results down the stretch. They tied Edina, which was a very good tie for them, and Champlain Park Coon Rapids, I think, is a really underrated team. It will be tough if they do win their game to go against Maple Grove, but a very talented team in that. And yeah, Centennial Spring Lake Park, also a team to keep an eye on. They only lost 6 games in the regular season.
All right, and now we look at the last 5 section winners from Section 5, and a lot of Maple Grove Crimson leaves up there. We do have Centennial Spring Lake Park in 2021. Unfortunately, they didn't get to play in state that year due to a COVID outbreak within the team. That was the first year of their co-op as well. You'll see just playing Centennial up there back in 2018. So kind of the 2 teams, Centennial and Maple Grove, back and forth. They're the 1-2 seeds again.
Yeah, no surprises there. Maple Grove has just been so good. They've got a lot of upper class talent that they rely on, certainly. So it's been impressive to watch them grow over the years as players. And of course, Centennial Spring Lake Park, another good team, and very similar record to Maple Grove, but they did lose head-to-head. That's why Maple Grove gets that 1 seed. But yeah, very 2-team section really in the past handful of years.
Yes, it has been. Is that going to change here in 2023? Let's take a look at our predictions. And this one is interesting. I knew this coming in. We all picked different ones here. You're going with the Maple Grove Crimson. I went Centennial Spring Lake Park. And then Pete going with North Wright County. I'd also add, Pete mentioned not only did they tie Edina, they actually tied Maple Grove recently as well. They have Jaden Weiser, a very strong goaltender, who's a senior with let's see here, .918 save percentage for Jaden Weiser this season. So that's why Wags is going with North Wright County. We went with the top 2 seeds. You're going to stick with the Crimson.
Yeah, I am going to stick with the Crimson. And I was actually very tempted to pick Champlain Park Coon Rapids to beat them in the semifinals. I think that's going to be a really close game. So, if Champlain Park Coon Rapids does get past Maple Grove, I think they win the section. But again, it's going to be tough to get past Maple Grove. That's why I picked them. Of course, they've got Danny Strom in goal, under 1.6 goals against average, very solid. But again, there's so many good teams. North Wright County, I like that pick by Pete. It's a good pick. They've had some good results recently. Can they get over that hump and finally win against one of those top teams? I'm not sure. We're going to find out.
Yeah, that would have been something if you would have went with Champlain Park Coon Rapids and none of us picked Maple Grove, the top seed. I went with Centennial Spring Lake Park, basically for the same reason I told you earlier about South St. Paul. Hard to beat a team 3 times in one season. Maple Grove's beaten Centennial Spring Lake Park twice. I think the Cougars get it done this time. Time to look at Section 6AA, and boy, this was a very interesting section seating when it came out. I was curious how they would go with it, and indeed, the Blake Bears earned the number 1 seed. They went undefeated in the section this year, a win over Edina, 2 wins over Benilde St. Margaret's. So at 14-11, the Blake Bears are the number 1 seed. Edina falling just short of a 20-win regular season as they got that final tie against North Wright County. 19-5-1 were the Hornets. Benilde St. Margaret's will take on their rink rivals, Hopkins Park in the quarters, and then Wayzata struggled a little bit this season, but they beat a couple teams that mattered to get up to the 4 seed. I think they could give at least a little bit of a challenge to Blake, but really a 3-team section here as it's kind of been, although Blake kind of in for Wayzata as one of those top 3.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Blake because they do have 11 losses, which is by far the most of any 1 seed in the state. But again, you mentioned head-to-head, they beat Edina, beat Benilde, beat Wayzata. So whenever you do well against your section opponents, you're going to be seeded accordingly. So Blake, of course, has Susie Higuchi, who has been so good, and Sam Brose as well as another talented player on the Blake Bears. But yeah, going to be interesting to see how this shakes out. Blake, though, and Edina do get the benefit of 4 extra days of rest. They'll play in the semifinals to start at Parade Ice Garden.
And we'll look at the last 5 champs in this section. I have a feeling I know what's going to pop up. And yes, it is 5 Hornet logos. The Hornet logo back from exile as it's up here instead of the E, but Edina's been dominant. They've made, I believe, 6 straight trips to the state tournament under Coach Sammy Calgar. I think the streak goes back even further than that under a previous coach. But this section's been all Edina. Maybe this is the year that changes.
Well, yeah, and it's obviously if you haven't been following it very closely, you're probably surprised to see Blake Bears at number 1. Of course, they were a team that went to the state tournament quite a bit as well in recent years. But yeah, Edina dominant in the section, so they do get the 2 seed. But again, could be potentially going back for more than the 6th year in a row.
Yeah, Blake made a lot of trips when they were down in Single A, winning some state titles. Haven't made it to the state tournament since they came up to Double A. Maybe this is the year. Let's look at the winners in this section, and here we go. Nobody had the courage to pick against the Hornets. We all go with Edina. One thing I'll throw in for Blake, 9th grade goalie Janie McGon has really taken over the net and made it her own. I think that could put Blake over the top if they do win. She has 10 wins and a .937 save percentage. In the end, though, hard to pick against Uma Cornier and the Hornets.
Yeah, it's really hard to pick against Uma in goal, who, of course, just hit the 100 win mark. First goaltender in Minnesota State High School League history, boys or girls, to reach that mark. Obviously a great achievement. And, Benilde's an interesting team because they did lose a lot from last year, but they still had a good team this year. They're very young. I think next year they have potentially maybe that chance to move and advance further in the section. But, again, tough to beat the Hornets. But give Benilde credit. And then, of course, Wayzata. Yeah, I could see them potentially giving Blake a game, but they'll need to get past Armstrong Cooper first.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree on Benilde St. Margaret's. They have a great young crop of talent and an Olympian, Kelly Panic, behind the bench. Maybe that gives them a little boost here come playoff time. Time to go to Section 7AA, and this one has the Andover Huskies at number 1. And we have our first and only play-in game in girls' brackets here. Northern Tier will play Princeton for the right to get Andover in the quarters. Past that, this was a bit of a wild section to figure out seeding. Blaine was just about 500. They'll play the Anoka Tornadoes, but they defeated Grand Rapids Greenway. That's why the Lightning fall to the 3 seed. Forest Lake, the 6 seed. Duluth, Elk River, you played last week. Well, time to play again. They'll play in the 4-5 matchup. They tied up at Heritage Center. They'll meet again. But is anybody going to challenge Andover?
If I'm being honest, no, I don't think so. And that's, again, nothing against these teams, but Andover has just been so good in recent years, so it's no surprise to see them at number 1. Blaine's a team, yeah, you mentioned they're about 500. They had lost 7 in a row before winning their last game, so they've turned that ship around, hopefully for them, right before sections. They're going to potentially be taking on Grand Rapids Greenway and sophomore sensation Mercury Bischoff, who hit the 40-goal mark this year as a sophomore. Certainly one of the best underclass players in the state. Whenever you get her in section playoffs, you never know if there could be an upset potentially in there.
Definitely. And then you look at, of course, the strength of the Huskies. Ella Berger, Issa Gettle at the top of the point charts. Courtney Stagman, their goalie, had 22 wins, most in the state, as the Huskies finished with 22 wins. They tie with a couple other teams at that number, but Stagman playing every minute in net for the Huskies. Last 5 winners in this section looks like this. We're going to see a lot of Husky heads. Yep, it's all Husky heads. Andover has swept the last 5 years in this section as they have really started a dominant run under Melissa Volk that culminated with a state title, their first in 2020 and then again in 2022.
Yeah, they multi-state championships for the Andover Huskies in recent years. And of course, they've been so good in the section, not going to be surprised to see them do it again.
All right, let's get it over with. Let's take a look at our section winners. And yes, it is all the Huskies indeed. You mentioned Mercury Bischoff for Grand Rapids Greenway. Haley Hansen is a fantastic goaltender for Blaine as well. So Pete has kind of mentioned this to us. You never know. You get to a 1-game section final that will either be at Proctor or Fogarty Arena. Blaine could have the home ice advantage at Fogarty, but Andover certainly overwhelming favorites.
Yeah, they are overwhelming favorites, and I believe that location will be determined based on who comes where, and just geographical location-wise, try and make travel as easy as possible. But yeah, Grand Rapids Greenway could be a team that I could see beating Blaine. But again, if they do get there into the championship, probably going to end, unfortunately for them, at the hands of the Andover Huskies.
All right, one last section to go. Here we go, 8AA. And we get to finish with another really competitive one as well, which is good. These section quarterfinals go off on Tuesday night, so actually it'll be a little bit before we air this. Hopefully none of our section champs lose. By then we'll be looking a little bit foolish. But anyway, Moorhead, Sartell, Sauk Rapids in the 1-8. Roseau, the 2 seed, they take on the Buffalo Bison down at the 2-7 matchup. Beyond that, there's definitely some good matchups. 4-5, 3-6, very competitive. Alexandria, St. Cloud, they played the last game of the regular season, and it was a win for St. Cloud. The Crush defeating Alexandria. They get to go right back and try to do it again. And then Bemidji, Brainerd Little Falls. Matt, I mentioned to you, they tied 0-0 in the regular season. Someone's got to score and win this time.
Yeah, you have to score however long that may take.
Yeah.
Alexandria, St. Cloud had some good games in the regular season. Of course, St. Cloud pulling off the upset, if you will, over Alexandria. Roseau Buffalo, an interesting matchup as well, but I think the team obviously that stands out is Moorhead. They had 8 losses, which was a lot for a team, in that number 1 spot. But they had a couple of losses to Warroad in there. I believe Andover was another one of their losses. So they're a battle-tested team. They've played some really good competition. And on paper, they are definitely the strongest team in the section.
Yeah, they've been building the last couple of years under Ryan Kraft, led by Bria Holm up front, who has 20 goals and 38 points. They have good depth as well. Spuds are the favorites. They're trying to make their first trip to St. Paul in a while. This is who has made it the last couple of years out of 8AA. And you will see Brainerd Little Falls up here a couple of times, actually 3 times on here. They made it as far as the state title game one of these years. There's an Alexandria trip, there's a Roseau trip, but nothing up there for Moorhead. Been a long time since the Spuds have been to state.
Yeah, it has been a long time, Brandon, and they certainly seem, like I mentioned on paper, like the favorites. But yeah, Brainerd Little Falls, they have somewhat found a way to play good hockey at the right time. This year they could definitely do so again. They're going to have a tough challenge against Bemidji in the quarterfinals. But keep an eye on Brainerd Little Falls. That experience oftentimes comes in handy during this time of the year.
Yeah, they play a lot of tight, low-scoring games. They've had great goaltending to carry them to those state tournaments, especially Olivia King now playing at the U of M. Let's take a look at our section winners out of 8AA. And we are all going to go with the skating Spud logo. Moorhead to win in Section 8AA. It was tough for me. I will say I like this Alexandria team, led by Lauren Maris, who is a good senior forward for them. Roseau, I think, could be a year or two away. They have a nice young crop coming through, but this is the year we think that the Spud crop, if you will, is going to be the team in St. Paul.
Yeah, and Sartell Sauk Rapids is not a terrible 8 seed either. They have won 5 games, and they do have a couple of wins actually over a couple of 2 seeds in Class A, which is Wilmer and Litchfield Dassel Cokato. So those are good quality wins for Sartell Sauk Rapids. Unfortunately, for them though, they have to go against the top-seeded Moorhead in the quarterfinals, which will be a difficult task for sure.
That's a great nugget on Sartell Sauk Rapids. Very nicely done. Well, that's it. 16 sections. We're all done with that. And if you liked this show, we're going to do it again for the boys in a couple weeks when the section brackets come out. We'll have our regular Inside the Bubble show on Sunday night as well on these same platforms. And we're going to do some state tournament shows as well that we're pretty excited for when those start up. But I understand, Matt, we have some more fun news to do with these sections.
Yeah, that's right. We are going to be streaming a handful of sections in both on the girls and the boys side. In girls, we're going to be streaming both 2A and 2AA, so we'll get that. And then on the boys side as well, we'll also have 2A and 2AA. And in my opinion, the boys 2AA might be the most entertaining section in the entire state. So you can catch it right here on MN Hockey TV. And we will also be streaming section 6AA for the boys and girls. So we'll have, of course, Blake, Edina, Benilde in 6AA, and of course, going to have Wyzetta, Edina, and some other Benilde as well for 6AA boys. So really looking forward to bringing you those games. And yeah, I'm very happy with the sections that we got this year.
Absolutely. You mentioned it. It's the best time of the year. We really hit the stretch run here for the next month plus until the end of the boys state tournament. We got a lot of great content coming for you here on Inside the Bubble. So for tonight, Matt Harrington, my co-host, I'm Brandon Spratt. As always, Glenn Gray, our producer. Have a great night, everyone, and thank you for joining us.